Hello and welcome back to Processing the Process, where we capture and discuss the technical, psychological, and contextual dynamics that shape the process of creating a work of art. Week by week, moment by moment, we are following Jonathan Riddell, choreographer and artistic director of Riddell Dance Theater, as he creates his latest works for RDT's Second Story Dance project and delves into new creative territory. Today we'll be talking about the latest developments with Jonathan's musical composition. And to bring you a little bit up to date since the last videocast, for those of you who may not have seen it, as we discussed last week, Jonathan reached a significant milestone. He completed the melody, lyrics, structure, and we'll call characterizations for all 6 songs of his debut demo album. Yay, Jonathan! Whoa! Awesome! And John shared many details of his composition process, and we also learned that being a singer-songwriter has been Jonathan's dream since adolescence. He also explained that his experience singing in choruses, in musical theater, studying music composition, theory, and history in college all facilitated his professional dance career. And of course, music is so important because, as we know, music and dance are inextricably linked. But perhaps most of all, diving into musical composition and experimenting with the cool electronic tools available today has made John feel like a kid again. And last week he told us just what feeling like a kid again means to him, including an intoxicating sense of freedom, boundless curiosity, operating without preconceived notions or limits, and not having to follow any rules. Well, this has been so exciting. And now it's time for the next step, actually playing the songs for a real live person. Now, John, I'm guessing that this is by far the scariest part so far. You know, what will the other person think? How will the other person evaluate the quality of John's work? Will this person be judgmental? Will this person like it? And who does John want to choose to be the first person to hear his work? So after all, it's kind of like a private premiere of sorts. Well, I've been calling this experience the big reveal, and I'm going to turn the floor over to John and ask him to take us through this experience. And John, as you describe the process, I'm hoping you'll touch on 3 things in particular, and I'll remind you if necessary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The first is, why do you think you tend to keep your work, your ideas, your dreams close to the vest? And I'm quoting from John from many years, close to the vest. Second, how did you feel before the big reveal? And how did you feel after the big reveal? Take it away, John.
Well, it's funny, you call it the big reveal. I call it coming out of the closet. It's true. I do keep these things close to the vest, and they are very private to me. And so when it came time to actually talk to anyone about it, that's very scary, because it's very much like suddenly I'm admitting something. To be more specific, the person who I first played these songs for is my wife, Rhonda, which, seems like a very natural and appropriate choice. You play it for the person closest to you. But I hadn't really told her much about what I was up to and what I was creating, again, because I was just keeping it very private. I had played her one song, I feel like it was maybe a year ago, and that was sort of my first sort of sample song, and it was very much, just a, hey, like, isn't this cool? Look at this thing I did on my computer, and with some moments I stole here and there within my hectic schedule, and that was a scary reveal. That also felt like coming out of the closet, because it was like, I made this thing. It's what I've kind of been doing with my time when I've been alone, and I'm now going to play it for you, and you don't have to like it, but I really hope you do. And she did. She loved it. She actually said, "Who are you? This is awesome." I was like, wow, okay, great. So this time, now having not one but 6 songs that I've been working on, it was, again, a natural choice to play them for her first, and it wasn't like this was coming so out of the blue, but still it was like, oh, by the way, we've gone from 1 song to 6, and I hadn't breathed a word of this before, and that's my own insecurity, that's my own fear, and it's also something that I've developed as I've gotten older, where I'm not so interested in sharing my raw ideas necessarily. It's one thing to brainstorm with someone, that's great and wonderful, but some ideas I don't know, I want to chew on them until and develop them and craft them until I feel they are at least finished enough that now I'm ready to share them. Now, of course, the dark side of that is you can fall into perfectionism and feel like you're never ready to reveal them. But I don't know. I've again, through it's the same with dances. So I'm kind of used to managing that anxiety. At any rate, so one day I told her, I was like, by the way, so I've created, I call it, like I said, I call it my demo album, and it's 6 songs long, so it's probably like an EP, but and she just was like, oh, okay, well, I'd love to hear it. I was like, great, so when are we going to do that? Because I'm kind of now dying to play these songs for you.
How about right now?
And the kids were around and playing, and she actually said, well, how about right now we could play it with the kids too? And I was like, I feel like it didn't seem right. Some of the songs are real heavy rock songs, and they're aggressive, and we listen to all sorts of music with my kids, so that actually isn't a problem. There's 1 or 2 curse words in these songs. Okay, they've heard songs with curse words before, but it just felt like, again, a more intimate event. So we decided to, and we couldn't do it right away that night, but we had to find a night that we would have the time to sit down together after the kids went to bed and really listen closely to this.
Right.
And it kind of stank because I had to wait like 3 more days before we could do it, which was like, so I was like, for 3 days. But it was worth it because kind of having the right environment, the right tone was important.
Good point.
Had we done it with a lot of distractions, it would have been just frustrating.
Absolutely.
So we did finally find a night to sit down and do it, And I plugged in 2 sets of headphones into my computer, and then she looked at me and she was like, "Yeah, I can't listen on those headphones." And she went and grabbed her like fancy noise canceling nice headphones. She's like, "I'm gonna listen on these." I was like, "Yes, good call." So like, so she heard these songs at a much better quality than I ever had, because I totally didn't even think about that. So she's having like this really rich, full experience, and I'm still listening on my rinky-dink buds, and I'm kind of like, how does it sound? Does it sound good? Anyway, we're real ramshackle around here, but again, it's just a demo. It's just a demo. It's not polished. And again, I was just blown away by her response. Now, granted, this is my wife. She loves me. Hopefully she loves everything, if not most things about me. But she is an artist herself. Mm-hmm. She is a music lover herself. And she's also been my wife for a long time, so she's very honest with me. And can be brutally honest when she wants to and needs to be. So I know that if she does like something and pays me a compliment, that it is sincere. Yes. And she was very complimentary of the body of work as a whole. Mm-hmm. She had favorite songs right away, and she commented that she was particularly moved by my lyrics throughout. She said, "Those mm-hmm. are fantastic. I wouldn't change a word of the lyrics."
Wow.
She had, little suggestions here and there, little requests, little inspirational ideas that popped into her head about most of the tracks. But most were very minor, actually. Mm-hmm. She really loved all of them. And then what was equally exciting, and again a nice ego stroke for me, is we listened to all 6 tracks through, like as if it were a short album, and we chatted she gave me that sort of initial broad stroke reaction, and mm-hmm. then she immediately was like, "Well, let's go back track by track. Let's talk about each one." And I could see how excited she was. And again, I didn't know what to expect. Right. I was hoping at least some like support, mm-hmm. or some at mm-hmm. least a like positive, that's great, honey, keep going. But she was really enthusiastic, and I can't thank her enough for that love and support from, again, the person who's most important to me. And
exactly. And I found it interesting when Jon told me the story, that later that evening and through the weekend, you guys had a great time brainstorming about mm-hmm. your work, and the ideas just kept flowing and flowing from what you say, and that the two of you were so into this process, and you were doing it together, mm-hmm. which is really special. Yeah. So to me, hearing your story was almost like icing on the cake, mm-hmm. to have gotten that piece as well.
Yes. Again, some of her response was, well, can we put some of these up on Spotify, mm-hmm. or a music sharing site so people can hear them? And how does that work? Can people self-publish music, or how does that? So immediately she's thinking business end, and how do we spread the word? And that was awesome. Again, that's a whole other level of enthusiasm, beyond
Absolutely.
Just I support what you do. And
mm-hmm.
and then she said, are you interested in just having these be recordings, or do you want to perform this music live? And I do want to perform mm-hmm. these works live at some point. We don't know what that looks like, but right. And then immediately that question affects how you think about how you present yourself as an artist. If I'm just worrying about the recording, then my personal image, things like that, mm-hmm. don't necessarily matter. But if I'm going to go out on a stage, then suddenly she's like, well, she's then asking me these questions, am I a solo act? Am I a band? How does that work? And blah blah blah. And then we're brainstorming names which I'm not going to reveal our brainstorming of names yet, but
play that close to the vest.
I'll play that close to the vest. I'll reveal that in time. But anyway, so it was very exciting, and it went on, as you said, into the next day, and so yay, that was good. It's good to come out of the closet.
It is, and from what you say, Jon, it served to fuel your enthusiasm for what you were doing, your commitment to it,
Absolutely.
Your desire to pursue it full steam ahead. You even said to me, and I wrote it down here so I could remember, I can taste it. I'm so close. I want it. And there it is. So
absolutely. And immediately all I could think about was like, okay, where's the next half hour, 45 minutes that I can grab of time with my computer and make some of these tweaks that she suggested, fill around with more ideas and just keep it going. I've started to, again, how can I learn more about sound mixing? How can I learn more about my voice technically? And I'm just YouTubing videos left and right now, again, at any spare moment that I can, just so the information gets in here. And I hope, at some point I'll be able to put it into practice. And, why not? I could be listening to dumb jokes or something, but instead I'm listening to these videos that are giving me a little tidbits of education. So,
well, interesting. Just as a note, given that you just spoke about, seeking any possible period of time you can to work on your music. It's interesting to see where you are in your process today vis-a-vis giving yourself the time to work, because in the past, typically, Jon would work only when his children were in structured, formal activities, when it seemed okay to do that. And now you're really giving yourself the permission to work, and maybe the kids are watching a movie, maybe they're playing with each other, and I'm getting the sense that you're feeling like, you know what? It's okay. It's really okay. So,
well, yeah, and again, when I was doing this much more experimentally, much more, again, privately, I would really wait until, like, the kids were both on a play date or they were both in school and I was truly alone. And especially in recording vocals, like I didn't want to be singing and screaming throughout the house, or have them come in and disturb any of that.
Sure.
I'm becoming more and more free with just like, as you said, like, oh, they're in front of the TV now, and I have a break in my chores, so let me just for 15 minutes run downstairs and like, and it's working out just fine, yeah, it's becoming a bit more of a passion project that's creeping into all the little empty spaces.
And you're loving it.
And I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
So after you shared the album with Rhonda, you actually decided to revamp 3 of the songs. You told me you re-recorded vocals and incorporated several of Rhonda's ideas, especially those involving adding a little bit more style and a more well-developed sense of identity. But as you described it to me, you soon realized that you had to take these ideas and, through trial and error, figure out how to play with them so they became authentically your own.
Right.
So could you share with us a bit about this process? How does one, or this one in particular, How do you actually do that?
Yes, I can think of a couple examples. One quick sort of overview example is a great nugget that Rhonda mentioned to me about one track was that the vocals weren't quite, I can't remember exactly what she said, but they weren't quite edgy enough, they weren't quite breathy enough. And she was just kind of using some adjectives, and it finally, what was most important for my point is that I had to sort of take what she was saying and translate it into, how am I going to realize this qualitative shift? How do I make my voice more like that? And then it just finally clicked, like, oh, she really liked, and I really liked. Again, it's what's important is what I ultimately choose and want. The vocals from the second track, which is called Amethyst, were successful in both of our opinions. And she thought the first track, When the City Is Ours, needed to be more in that vein, is what I kind of translated into my own mind. So I went back and re-recorded them more in the style of the Amethyst vocals, and it did. It just, oh wow, the song just had much more punch, much more impact. Yeah. So again, that was great. But again, you have to take the feedback and then think. I had to really think mechanically. How can I make my voice do that? What can I do with my voice to get it more like that? I couldn't just shoot for an arbitrary or an external goal. Like if she says, well, sing higher, it's like, well, okay, but how high can I make it that still feels like me? That's a rough kind of example. Another example is one of the tracks called One Mistake. She just kind of very capriciously said, I want bird songs in there, like at certain moments, and by the end, maybe it has this sort of very angelic feel, and wouldn't it be awesome if these bird sounds came in? And I loved the idea right away. Bird sounds aren't uncommon in music, and I was like, but I thought, oh yeah, it would be perfect. But again, then I have to take that concept and bring it into my process and my context. And so then I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm making this 99% on my computer. Can I find bird sounds online? Can I walk outside and record some? Or are there some already in the music program? Or is there an instrument that sounds like a bird? Can I use that? Would that be just as effective? And then if there's not a sample already of an instrument making a sort of bird-like sound, can I take another sample and deconstruct it in such a way and recreate it in a way that will sound like a bird? So it's all like, how do I want to be spending my time? And what's the result, and what am I able to play with, and what is true to the process that created these songs up until this point. I didn't want to suddenly just go in some other working direction and then paste it on. So that was one that I really had to wrestle with, and I'm still working on it. I found sort of a prototype solution where again I found an interesting sample, and I did break it up a little bit. It's a string instrument making a sort of bird-like sound, but I don't know. I'm not 100% on it yet, so we'll see. What then is interesting is I also started thinking, well, maybe it doesn't have to even sound like a bird. Maybe it's just another instrument that has the qualities of bird sounds. It might be light, it might be erratic rhythmically, it might just give a beautiful ethereal quality to the top of the music. So I actually found a very light conga loop that that had those qualities that I just said, and so I put that in there too, and I did it with the other bird-like string instrument at first, and they sounded very interesting together. And then when I took the bird string away and just left the conga, it sort of still had that quality to it. So I'm like, oh, I just that added a beautiful layer, and maybe that's enough. So I'm still sleeping on that one. I'm still simmering with that one, but it's just interesting, all the possibilities. And ultimately, I have to pick what's true to the process and the end product.
Well, I think you just used the word process, and that was, gee, surprise, surprise, on my mind, because you, I think, have beautifully described a creative process, bringing us into your head as you started to consider this, and then maybe this, and maybe the tree branches this way, and then that. But then I thought, and Jon took us through a true process. And I think that every single aspect of what it is you do, whether it's your music or in dance or writing and so forth, while your details differ naturally, genre to genre, I think we're still coming back to a pretty similar process dynamically. And it is a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation, and I think you emphasized something that's really key that I'm hoping our artist friends really listen to and take in, which is the importance of staying grounded in your authentic truth. So I almost think of it as taking a plethora of ideas that come from any number of sources and then filtering it through you and seeing then what emerges.
Yeah, it very much feels that way. And it's easy to get pulled in various directions, and I'm just trying to be very sensitive to when I sort of start to feel myself straying from center, again, like this quest to find the right sound, and then it became an obsession, and then I had to say, wait, go back to your tools, go back to what's brought you to this point already. Don't jump to a whole other mode of operating. Stay true to your path, and a little faith that you will get there,
Oh, absolutely. And I think your consciousness about your commitment to authenticity keeps you on the path ultimately. And we know nothing is a perfect straight line.
Yeah.
But even with the variations, you're still coming back to you ultimately, I think, because all of this is really quite conscious. So something for the rest of us to take note of, for sure, however it applies in our own idiosyncratic contexts. And we will look forward in future videocasts to seeing how all of this develops. And we thank you for sharing this process with us at this quote-unquote raw stage, but in fact this is really giving us a great sense of how you create something from nothing, in essence, all along the way. So we thank you for joining us this evening once again. We look forward to seeing you next week, and have a great evening.
All right.